I publish and edit a newspaper called the Kingston Eye Opener. Canadians should know about the famous Calgary Eye Opener, which is a part of their newspaper history. In the early part of the 20th century, a Scottish immigrant named Bob Edwards produced the Calgary Eye Opener. And it's, anybody who studies journalism would know it's a great episode in Canadian journalistic history. He was a very legendary character, and in honor of his honesty and adventurism in newspaper writing, we used the name Kingston Eye Opener, and we gave him full credit for the idea. I grew up, and other people I know grew up in an age where we believed very strongly that an independent and free press was a cornerstone to protecting democracy and freedom and keeping government to account. That's an idea that seems to be sort of historical now. Nobody seems to care anymore. My efforts are humble efforts, but so far, over the last 5 years, we've had effects for which I'm very grateful, both in exposing things like the Bilderberg Club. Any critical analysis of today's television and radio and print media is going to disclose that events that are happening are purposefully not being reported, very important events. And and then they start telling us things that are happening when in a certain way that they're not. So I got tired of hearing myself complain about the inadequacies of today's media and decided to do something about it. We produce, in the tradition of Bob Edwards and the Calgary Eye Opener, we produce a sporadical. We print when there's news to print. So we don't have to deal with a deadline, and we can always be ready for a story that should be printed. So that when Daniel Estulin was coming to Kingston to give a talk very recently, we were immediately able to put out a paper announcing that to everybody.
Can you give us a background on your first involvement with Daniel?
He did a public talk on the nature of flamenco music from southern Spain. Now this is a very sort of obscure form of music, but a very beautiful form, and a form in which I had a lot of interest. Interestingly enough, in flamenco music, it's an extraordinary thing where Western music met Eastern music. Many of the intricate rhythms in flamenco music can only be traced back to northern India, not even southern India, but northern India. And so it's a fascinating topic, but a little bit of an esoteric one. Not everybody wants to hear about the fine points of flamenco. But he was giving a talk in Toronto. It was reported on the CBC, and I phoned him to say, please keep a seat for me, I want to hear this. And that's where I met him. For a couple of years after that, he gave me guitar lessons, again sporadically, whenever I could get to Toronto. And he was enormously helpful to me. And we got to know each other a little better through that process. And then he headed off to Spain. And I didn't see him for some time. So that's really how we originally got together. It had nothing to do with international or national or local politics.
And you are an integral part of this book. It's more or less dedicated to you, and you're referenced a couple of times in it. Were you surprised at Daniel's interest in the Bilderbergers?
Yes, I'd honestly never heard of them before. He ran an article on them, and it was covering the 2004 Stresa, Italy Bilderberg conference. And we got the copy for the paper, and I looked at the copy, and I said, Dan, you gotta be nuts. I'm not printing this stuff. This is crazy. And he said, Geoff, it is crazy. It's also absolutely accurate and absolutely true. And I said, you're gonna get me sued, but so is everybody else, so we'll run it. So we ran it, and there was immediate interest in it. And the little bit of research I was able to do backed up everything he said. The next year, when they met in near Munich, Germany, again we ran the story. And then the next year, of course, was the famous event near Ottawa, in the suburb of Kanata, and I attended that with Daniel Estulin. the mainstream media continues to refuse to talk about it. When people understand what's at stake, first of all, there will always be a Bilderberg. If Bilderberg disappeared tomorrow, something else would crop up, for the simple reason it's the nature of greedy people and bullies. It's always been in the nature. I mean, we talk about leaders of countries. Mr. Bush jumps to mind, Mr. Harper jumps to mind. If you get rid of them, another buffoon will replace them. You know, those guys are infinitely replaceable by greedy people. What the populace has to do is they have to become much more disciplined than they've been in the last 50 years. They have to be aware of the big issues, and they have to start to act. One of the things you'll see within the Bilderberg Group is there's a great deal of cooperation and discipline. If the broader public learns cooperation and discipline, those are two easy words, but very hard things to live, then the greater population will decide the future of this country and the future of the world, not an elite few.
And I'm the author of an international bestseller called The True Story of the Bilderberg Club, which has been now translated into 26 odd languages, I think, and is present in 48 countries. This is what we have behind us, a store called Chapters. It's part of the Heather Reisman empire. Heather Reisman is a member of the Bilderberg Club from Canada. And from what I understand, Chapters-Indigo has decided not to carry my title, and would just like to find out why. We have sold over 1.5 million copies. I think we're actually closing in on about 2 million copies around the world. That's just the first Bilderberg title. My new book, which has just been released in Spain, called The Shadow Masters. The first edition alone is 53,000 copies, which, you know, keeping in mind that in Canada, bestseller is 10,000 copies. The first edition alone, 53,000 copies. That'll be, you know, I guarantee a platinum edition in music record terms. D-E-R-E-E-R-G. Yep.
In Canada, the biggest bookseller, which is Chapters-Indigo, has decided they're not going to move it in any serious fashion. When the book was first available, Eye Opener people that went to ask about it were told it would never be available in any store, anywhere in Canada, ever, as far as Chapters-Indigo is concerned. They've since toned that down. They're now saying, well, yeah, we can, you give us some money, and if you're lucky, in 3 to 5 weeks, we'll get it. They look it up, the helpful sales staff look it up, they say, oh, there seems to be a problem with this. We think there's a problem with the publisher. Well, the publisher had no problem. There seems to be a problem, but you could pay for it now, and we might be able to get it in 3 to 5 weeks, but it's probably 5 weeks. In fact, it might be 6 weeks. In fact, it might be 7 weeks. In fact, frankly, sir, you're better to go to an independent bookstore. That's what we're consistently told at chapter stores across southern Ontario.
Question actually that relates to your political work, and actually I think it applies to you as well, Heather. In 2005, the Green Party passed a resolution in favor of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel, against the apartheid system in Israel. I'm wondering if you're aware that Ms. Reisman here actually runs an organization called the HESEG Foundation, which essentially gives money to lone soldiers who choose to serve in the Israeli military. I think all of us know here that the Israeli military, the crimes against humanity that they're responsible for. So I'm wondering what maybe you have to say about that. Perhaps they're cutting my mic now.
But Heather, I'm wondering if you can answer the question as to why you support apartheid in Israel. We're calling for a boycott of Chapters-Indigo.
Can I say to the people who have attended here, I'm not sure how many of you attended as part of this demonstration. It's unfortunate that this is happening for those who didn't attend as part of it. Let me just say one thing, because I won't engage in a debate on this subject. The facts that they are giving you are not correct. However, I will not engage in a dialogue with them.
Store called Chapters. It's part of the Heather Reisman empire. Heather Reisman is a member of the Bilderberg Club from Canada.